Well, hello, everybody. I welcome you from sunny Central Valley, California. My name is Dr. Derek Riddle. I'm an assistant professor here at CSU Stanislaus. I was also a mentee to Dr. Beck. She mentored me and has been a great mentor, and she has invited me to share a little bit of my knowledge and understanding about professional development, and specifically in regards to this article that you just read, Opfer and Petter, from 2011. So I'm going to go ahead and just dive right in because I know I have a short time with you, and I know you probably don't want to just hear me ramble, but I'm going to share my screen with you and just go through a few things that I think will be helpful for you as you are looking at some of the things you're doing this semester with needs assessment and working with districts and putting together kind of professional learning plans. So really my goal for the few short minutes that we have is to give you some insight to Opfer and Petter and why this article, at least for me and for us in the field that study professional development, is so monumental. And then give you some implications from that article that might help you with those future assignments and your future work with teachers, specifically in teacher learning and development. So why is this article so monumental? Because really, up to this point, this article is a shift in thinking in the field of professional development. So just to give you some background, pre-millennium, and Opfer and Petter allude to this, there was some things that were in the works. Professional development was growing. The concepts and agendas behind researching professional development and understanding it was growing and developing and moving in good directions. But as we know, mostly with education, it seems like educational policy shapes a lot of the work that we do as teachers. And so right around the millennium, with the introduction to the No Child Left Behind Act and all of that came along with it, that agenda that was kind of emerging and forming and trying to understand professional development was halted. And replaced with a focus on causation, as kind of they allude to. And in the sense of now we need to understand truly like clear effects on what works with teachers and what works with developing teachers to become better so that they can improve student achievement, because now we have this kind of added accountability act. So two monumental works really emerge as a result of that shift. And that comes from Michael Garrett and Laura DeSimone. Both of them start really looking specifically at what is it about the professional development activity that seems to enhance teacher learning. And so they did some large-scale national type studies and essentially reported this, as you can see on my screen. So they argued that professional development, or effective professional development, was made up of 6 features. And these are those 6 features. In terms of core features, we're looking specifically at making sure that content knowledge is being shared, not just knowledge about your subject, but knowledge about how students learn your subject, that the professional development incorporated active learning experiences, and that it was coherent, that it aligned with what teachers were teaching in their classrooms, with their goals at their school, with goals in the district, that aligned with standards from the state. So all of that had to be there. In terms of structure, the form of the professional development was important in a sense that it could be coaching. We were really trying to move away from the kind of drive-by workshop, that they found that ineffective. And so there were other forms that seemed to be more effective for job-embedded purposes, like here's a PD, let's do some coaching, anything that kind of got past just the one and done. Another structural feature, collective participation, that there were lots of opportunities for PLCs to interact, to engage with one another, PLCs meaning professional learning communities. And that the more teachers collectively talked together and worked together and kind of brainstorm and thought and reflected together, that was enhancing their learning. And that it had to be for a significant duration. Some studies suggested up to 80 hours. To now, from what I understand with a lot of the literature, that's still very nebulous, but enough for duration in terms of length of time and intensity, time spent on the activity, was really enhanced the professional development. So all that happens. Subsequent studies follow that. Around 2009, DeSimone comes back out and says, listen, we've got now enough research to support that these 6 features, these 6 core features is what comprises effective professional development. Let's move the agenda in a different direction, but let's basically call for a consensus that this is the foundation of what works in teacher professional learning. The problem that Opfer and Petter now raised in 2011, and I love this quote, and I'm going to just read it because we see now from 2011 and beyond this problem. And you've read it in the article, so I'll just go ahead and highlight really what they're focusing on here. So they said, as a result of this review of literature they're doing, we question why there are reports in this literature of teachers attending professional development with all the characteristics of effectiveness, and that's to where they allude to Michael Garrett and DeSimone, and yet learning or change does not occur. So this is what starts to happen is, okay, we've got this foundation that we're calling for a consensus, But some studies are suggesting that learning is not happening. So what's going on here? Conversely, we wondered why there are reports that some teachers learn and change, which there were studies that were saying that didn't have any of those identified characteristics of effectiveness. Again, alluding back to DeSimone and Garrett's work. So this is where they start saying we've made, as they called it, an epistemological fallacy. We've screwed up. We've jumped the gun. We really don't truly understand teacher learning, and so we kind of need to shift our thinking a little bit. And really what they're focusing on and harping on is that all we've done is really look at the activity. We've just looked at what we've presented to teachers, what we, from an outside external influence, what we've designed for teachers, and assumed that that one variable will affect and change teachers and help them learn and be more effective with their students. Unfortunately, that type of thinking, and this is where I love Opfer and Petter's framework, is that continues to kind of be the mainstream thinking still to this day in professional development learning. So for example, this study came out, a couple years ago in 2017 with, Linda Darling-Hammond, which is always a big famous person to throw ideas out and people seem to listen to, but she continues to argue for the same problem that, and advocates for the same problem that, let me backtrack. She advocates for the same problem that Opfer and Petter are arguing against, meaning most of her report here says, well, yeah, professional development is comprised of these features, this activity. And she completely, in my opinion, misses the mark. And so, again, this is what Opfer and Petter are raising in this article is we don't understand why. So, for example, active learning. What kind of active learning causes teachers to learn better or to essentially learn the content of what they're supposed to be learning? That's a big question. Why is it that it needs to be active learning to engage teachers or to enhance their learning? These are a lot of things that, again, the literature wasn't answering, and Opfer and Petter are raising these questions to ask why. We don't really have a solid theory that we can ground, hey, these features will do the job because. We were missing the because. So they advocate for this complexity model that essentially we need to stop focusing just on the activity itself and incorporate some of these other pieces that influence teacher learning. The teachers themselves, their beliefs, their prior knowledge, their practices, their experiences, to where they approach an activity and may, just like our students, approach anything we do in our class. And because of all those variables, motivation, their beliefs, their understanding, their prior knowledge could affect their learning for either positive or negative. And then also the school and what the school believes and the school culture and the structure and everything that entails in that bubble also could potentially influence teacher learning. And so essentially what Opfer and Petter have done, and hopefully this history is now giving you some context, that they've shifted the field to think differently now about the way we approach teacher professional development. That it's not just, okay, I've got to come up with this great engaging activity and that's how teachers learn, but there's more to it. We really need to understand the teachers themselves. We need to understand the schools in which they work in. And the complexity piece here is that we need to understand that there is not going to be a generalizable model across all contexts, but that this frame itself can be generalized in various contexts and can have a lot of variability and change, but it's still grounded in kind of this general concept and this general complex model. So some implications for you as you now move forward and do your needs assessment, some things I would have you think about that I think are important, is when you start thinking about the activity, I'm not disregarding DeSimone and Garrett's work. I think they're still grounded in some solid research, and I think they have been supported by research. So when you think about the activity that's being delivered at schools for professional development, ask yourself, how well do those planned activities align with the effective features of PD as presented to us by Garrett and DeSimone? So is it active? Is it aligned to what teachers are doing and their goals? Is the form more job embedded? There's instructional coaching, there's PLC learning, there's inquiry, all those types of things. In terms of looking now at the teacher and adding some of this complexity model, start to think about what are the teacher's beliefs about professional development? How does that influence their learning? What motivates them to want to learn? Those things and those factors are going to either hinder or promote their learning. What about their prior knowledge? What do they understand? Again, I'm thinking right now as I'm struggling with a teacher to shift from differentiated instruction to universal design for learning. And my understanding of differentiation and then trying to understand UDL, sometimes I'm having a gap in understanding. And so I, as a professional developer, we need to understand that teachers are going through that. as well as their past experiences. Teachers often are resistant to change because they are doing things that they feel work, and now doing something new is a little bit risky, shaky. They don't know if it's going to work, and often they haven't seen whether it's going to work. And Thomas Guskey talked a lot about allowing teachers to develop new experiences through observation. Go watch teachers who are successfully implementing these practices so that you can start to believe that, hey, I might be able to do the same and I see success here. Otherwise, teachers are really stuck in their past experience, and they like to, by creatures of habit, do what works and kind of stick with what they feel already works. Second question for teacher: does the PD afford opportunities for practice and reflection? Teachers have to directly, and they want to directly apply what they're learning, and then they need to have a space where they can critically examine and reflect on that. And there's lots of good stuff around how to do that in terms of, video-based professional learning, having teachers film themselves and reflect on it. Lots of things you can do there, but that is a core question to think about. And then finally, the school, thinking about school culture and the influence and how that influences teacher learning is really important. So understanding where principals supporting them, understanding if principals and administration supports them with these new ideas, how they're being evaluated. All of these things play a variable into whether they want to learn and whether they will learn. So I know I had just a few short minutes that gives you a little insight and a little idea into that article, its importance in the field of professional learning, and how you can use some of that insight to apply it to your work. So if you have further questions, feel free to reach out. I put my email there, driddle@csustan.edu. Love to answer any of your questions. And thanks for taking the time to listen.